Hi, I'm Rhonda Larson, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about heavy metal detoxification. And we're going to make a recipe that really helps to support heavy metal detox. Heavy metals are basically, we all have heavy metal toxicity in our body. If we're living on the earth today, we all have some percentage of heavy metal toxicity, and we accumulate heavy metals through the air we breathe, the food we eat, the utensils we use, the cookingware, the aluminum, even the aluminum antiperspirants that we use for deodorant, the amalgams from our dental work that we've had also adds a heavy metal load to our system in the form of mercury. And a lot of symptoms can come because of these heavy metals in our body. So the first one is fatigue, and almost everybody today that I talk to has some level of fatigue that they're dealing with. Fatigue is one, an overgrowth of candida or yeast, a poor functioning immune system if you're prone to getting colds a lot or flus easily, and just an overall sense of something, doesn't feel right. That, if there's something, if you feel like you're not getting better, even eating a healthy diet or exercising, heavy metals can be an underlying issue if you feel like everything you're doing, wondering why everything you're doing you think is right and you're still not feeling better. So heavy metals can be a large part of that problem. So one thing that we can do is eat foods that help to detoxify heavy metals from our system. There's chelating agents that we can take, such in supplement form, and just preventing our exposure as much as possible to heavy metals in our environment. Making sure we're not cooking in aluminum, preventing ourselves from wearing aluminum-based deodorants, also making sure that we're not getting amalgams in our teeth, making sure we're getting porcelain instead of the metal fillings. Large fish can be also a contaminant for mercury in our system. Shellfish can also be a common concern for mercury exposure. There's just so many things. Even if we live in an old home, an old lead paint, if your paint is chipping at your windows, or and things that we don't always think about that could be causing heavy metal toxicity in our bodies too. And the biggest thing with heavy metal detox is making sure that your body is able to get rid of them on a daily basis. All right, so we're going to make a recipe today that can be actually really helpful to help chelate and bind heavy metals such as aluminum, mercury, cadmium, and arsenic out of your system. And the biggest herb for that is cilantro. So I have a whole plate here of freshly washed cilantro. It's just beautiful. It's one of the best herbs that we have that can actually bind to the metals and pull them out. So it can come out through our urine and usually our bowel movements too, it comes through. But we're also adding a little bit of fresh mint, which can also help to bind to some of these metals too. And we're gonna add a little bit of onion, a little bit of lime juice. We're gonna also use a serrano pepper. You can also use a jalapeno if you want. Serranos are a little bit hotter than a jalapeno, but I like to have a little bit of the spice. And the reason I picked this recipe is because my husband and I love to eat at Indian restaurants, and one of my favorite Indian foods, which is funny, I'm always drawn to their cilantro mint pesto that they have with their papadums, and they have it up front where they have their little different little sauces that you can dip things into. So I just love this, and I've been trying to figure out the recipe for a while. This is about the closest I've come to the actual flavor of the recipe. So it's great tasting, plus it is wonderful for heavy metal detox. And we're also going to add a little bit of ginger root too. And we'll walk through these as we add them. And we're going to put them in the blender. I usually use the food processor to grind up foods, but this chutney or pesto that you get at this, the Indian restaurants is always such a fine consistency. So we're going to use the blender. So the first thing that I like to do, oh, you know what, and we also are going to use some olive oil and some salt and pepper, of course, and coconut milk, which is an interesting addition to it. That's one thing that the Indians use for part of their recipes. So that was one thing that I was missing for so long. So we're just going to add a little bit of the coconut milk. I have organic coconut milk. If you can try to find the organic, that's great. And try to always use organic produce and ingredients if you can. That's always the best because you're preventing yourself from using pesticides in your food and just limiting your toxicity exposure. So we're going to add a ½ cup of that coconut milk. We're going to just put that right into the blender. We're going to add our liquids first. And we're going to add another, we're going to add almost a ½ cup of olive oil. Between, I would say, probably right there, at that ridge there, right before the ½ cup. Not quite a ½ cup. So we're going to put that in. And then I'm going to put in the little things first. I'm going to put the ginger root right in there. And this was a pretty nice big chunk of ginger that I peeled. This is almost a ½ of a yellow onion. Just peel that and put that right in. And then I just throw the pepper in, seeds and all. Just put that right in there. And if you don't like spicy food, don't use the pepper because it will give it a spice. So, and it's still delicious without the pepper. And then I take the juice of a lime, just juice it right here on this little mini juicer here. And pour that in, and then the other half, I'll just juice that up. So we're going to add all of that there. All right, so that's the liquids and the small solid stuff. And the salt, we're going to use, I'm sorry I don't have a measuring spoon here. I'm just going to use about a ½ teaspoon of salt. This is Himalayan salt. You can use Celtic sea salt or real salt. A couple pepper grinds. I usually do maybe about 10. But if you don't have a pepper grinder, you can just use about a ¼ teaspoon of black pepper. And then, so I have this fresh mint. I'm going to put that in first. And you want to try to take it off the stems as much as you can. And I'm just going to put that right in there. And this was about, I would say this is about 2 cups of fresh mint. Put that right in there with everything else. And then the cilantro, this is about 5 cups of cilantro, 4 to 5 cups of fresh cilantro. Now you can, decrease this by half if you want. This makes probably about 2 to 3 cups of pesto, so you don't have to make this much. I usually make a large amount because we eat it pretty quickly, but you can half this recipe as well. So I'm going to mix this first. I found that if you add all of these greens right away, it clogs up the blender. So I'm going to mix this up first and get this going. And then as this starts grinding really nicely, we're going to add the cilantro in. So we're going to start the process here. Okay, so that is nice and ground. It's like a nice kind of liquidy consistency. Now, handful by handful, I'm going to kind of try to push the cilantro down into the blender while it is off, of course. And we're going to turn it back on. Stop it again, and we're going to add more. Found that if you do it this way, it's much easier. But I'm just going to kind of try to push this down as much as I can. Sometimes you do need a little bit more of coconut milk because this gets really thick and then it works the blender too hard. So you might need a little bit more of milk just to keep it the right consistency. But we're going to turn this back on. Looks good, and we're going to add our last amount of cilantro here. scrape this all together here. And this should do it. I'm just gonna finish that up. Alright, that looks about perfect. And I wish you could smell this. It smells so yummy. It smells just very fragrant, and you can smell all those wonderful ingredients in there, the mint and the cilantro and just everything. I'm going to pour it in a bowl so you can see the consistency of it. All right, so I'm going to pour this in a bowl so you can see it is a little bit, it's not super thick, but it's just a nice creamy consistency, and it is super yummy. At home we love to put this on, if we make Indian dishes with, you know, lentils and rice, we put this on as a garnish. I love to just dip crackers in it. I could eat this at every meal if I could, but you can get creative with it. You can put it over rice, you can put it over meat if you want, you can put it over chicken, beef, whatever you put in. Another thing that I like to tell patients or clients too, you can, if you're making wraps with meat or veggies in or avocado, use this as your sauce. It makes a delicious wrap. So you can just really get creative with it, but it's very healthy, plus it's great to help to bind metals in your system and pull them out. And you can, you know, have a couple tablespoons a day or have a little bit more if you want. So I hope you enjoy it and have a great day. Goodbye.